Hello and welcome to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. I'm Anthony Pyne and I'm very happy to be joined this week by Paul, Corry and Stuey Byrne to reflect on the weekend's domestic action and look ahead to the small matter of this weekend's FAI Cup final between Bohemians and St. Pat's. Stephen Kenny names his Ireland squad on Thursday, perhaps the last time that he will get to do that. We'll touch on how he might approach the Euros qualifier away to the Netherlands, and we'll talk a little bit about the upcoming promotion relegation playoff between Waterford and Cork City. First, though, we'll start with the champions. Shamrock Rovers have won their fourth league title in a row. They have a very strong, highly successful academy, and they play at the best ground in the LOI. And yet, Paul, there seems to be tension behind the scenes. Dan McDonnell had a lengthy and very detailed piece in Saturday's Irish Independent around this. This is dense and it's not straightforward. But basically, Rovers have an ownership model that's split in three between businessmen Ray Wilson, Dermot Desmond. They have 25% stakes, and then the remaining 50% is fan owned through their members club. And there just seems to be this stew of tension at board level. They're heading for a financial shortfall next year. That looming shortfall has led to questions about where the money is going to come from to tide the club over. Will it come solely from the monies raised by the members club? Will that in turn change the ownership dynamic by potentially diluting the fans' shareholding and lead to Wilson and Desmond having greater control? There's claims, there's counterclaims. There's also been questions around the money invested into some of Stephen Bradley's signings, which has angered him. So, Paul, is this the sort of football politics that can happen when you have three sets of shareholders? The foundations at Rovers remain strong. Is it more likely that resolutions will be found here and they will stay as the league standard bearers, or is there potentially an implosion coming at the club?
Yeah, there was a lot in that piece, Anthony, the other day that Dan McDonnell had in the Irish Independent, and you could probably spend the next 45 minutes talking about different aspects of it. I guess what's surprising a lot of people is that this is, coming to the fore amidst what is, being such a successful period of time for the club on the pitch. You think about the European runs, the 4 in a row, the FAI Cup that they had in that run, the players that they've sold on. And to many on the outside, I'm sure a lot of people would have thought that it was all rosy, and it seems like it's anything but. And there seems to be so much turmoil between the members of or the directors that they have that sit on the board from the fan side, and particularly it seems from Ray Wilson's side. It's surprising, but at the same time, I guess when you think back to Stephen Bradley's comments a couple of weeks ago after the win against Bows, and he was talking about, certain people of the board pulling against them, it probably shouldn't come with too much of a surprise. The financials is probably another aspect. You think of all the success they've had and how much they've put into that club, and yet they still seem to be under a massive deficit because of the poor European campaign they had this year. So it's hard to know what to think of it. It's hard to know really what part of it that you focus in on, but at the same time, I'm sure for Stephen Bradley, he's thinking about the squad and the playing staff that they have and the coaching staff, and ensuring that they're able to keep the cohort of that team together again for next year. Because financially, winning the league is such an important carrot for any League of Ireland side to have, but it seems even more importantly for Shamrock Rovers in order to kind of keep the boat steady for the next 12 months and hope that they can go a little further in Europe and bank that extra European money that is on show. But for any club within the League of Ireland, you want consistency and you want, I guess, continuity on the pitch, and they seem to have that with the players and the coaching staff. But off the pitch, you also need continuity, and it seems that it is very, very rocky in Tallaght at the moment.
And Stuey, one does sort of feed into the other in terms of, obviously on the pitch, Shamrock Rovers, they've won another league. They've got a squad full of players with heaving pockets full of medals, and they've been there and done it all. But a lot of those guys may be looking at this going, well, where is this going to be in a year's time? Where am I going to be? Is this the sort of end of a dynasty, or can we kick on again? I mean, it's not ideal, and it's not something that anybody would have wanted in the aftermath of winning a 4 in a row, which would be this crowning achievement that they've been building towards for the last 4 years. It's a strange time, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, I think part of me doesn't really care. Because I just think I don't mean that I mean that in a kind of a how would you describe it? Like, really, what should have happened? We should be now in a position. Rovers should be now in a position. They've won 4 league titles in a row. They've got infrastructure in really good place. Got training ground in really good place. Academy really good place. I mean, they tick all the boxes. They've got investment in the football club, and not just any investment. It's investment from some serious business people in the business world. And yet, despite all that, instead of us now talking about who are Shamrock Rovers going to sign, where can they go from here, we're talking about this. All the sort of the dirty washing is kind of coming out now in public, and it's kind of been going on for a few weeks as well. And what I mean by I don't really care is that kind of annoys me a little bit, because if the football club has gotten itself in such an entanglement over the last couple of years that this is now where they're at after winning 4 league titles in a row, then something has badly gone wrong somewhere, and something is going to give. There's no doubt about it. Something is going to give, whether that's in the playing staff, whether that's the team, whether that's in the background. Something has got to give. Rovers kind of confused me a little bit, because when I look at the stadium and I look at the achievement of the team, and I know it's been a poor year in Europe for them, and there's no doubt about it. The players in the team will be probably the first to admit that it didn't go well for them. However, they did go and win the league again, and they've done what they've probably set out to achieve at the start of the season, and that was probably the main focus. Although I do think Europe is probably very, very close to it, but the confusion from my part comes with the club. I mean, it's the most successful football club in the history of Irish football. It just won 4 league titles in a row. They have a fantastic stadium. They're just about to add 2,000 seats to that stadium. The training ground, everything we talked about. It must be the most brandable place in the country. Yet for some reason it's not. And when I look at, for example, what Daniel Lambert has done with Bohemians Football Club, and other clubs are starting to follow suit, I'm confused. I don't understand what the problem is. So I think commercially there's been a dropping of the balls somewhere along the lines, in that they haven't been able to kind of maybe utilize the football club in terms of sponsorship and so on and so forth. And now what worries me is they may have to cut their budget, and they may have to cut it considerably. And I think from a playing point of view, that will be a disaster. I think that will be a disaster for them. They are now prime placed, Shamrock Rovers, to really go. You would think they will be in a position to now sign 3 or 4 players, freshen up the squad. There's definitely squad fatigue, there's no doubt about it. But the natural course of things will change. Alan Manis is retired, Ronan Finn is moving on. You might see a couple of others naturally move on as well. And that would, you would think, create opportunity for Rovers to go sign 3 or 4 players, and try and progress a little bit more. But they find themselves in a situation where there's, like I said, a lot of dirty washing being aired and a lot of things going on in the background, and that's fine. That's what you get with big football clubs. But they've been here before. I think this kind of is a little bit of deja vu for the club. Reminds me of the time when Michael O'Neill had just won a double back in 2011, 2012. Wanted to kind of kick on a little bit, and the club probably right. It's, you just don't know, but probably rightly at the time said no, not really ready to do that, and made the call. Michael left, and so on and so forth. Stephen Kenny came in. That was a disaster, and there's been a bit of a scrap from then on to kind of build them up to where they are now. And it's unfortunate. It's extremely unfortunate that they're not in a position now to kind of maybe make better decisions around the kind of where they're going after, off the back of the incredible, by the way, incredible success they've had. I mean, I actually don't think this 4 in a row has been advertised enough. It is an unbelievable achievement. Very rarely done in world football, let alone in Ireland. And yes, this is what we're talking about.
Are they insulated, Paul, from the kind of drop we've seen before? We've seen boom and bust in the League of Ireland for the last couple of decades.
That's what everyone's afraid of. That's the problem. I think we need to get away from that. We need to stop fearing progression. It's not 2008 anymore. The economy here is thriving. yet people don't seem to want to admit that, like, you know, that kind of way. Sorry to cut across you, but I kind of felt that there's a kind of there is a fear factor here, and it's understandable to a point. But where are we gonna, like, how are we ever going to move on if this is the kind of the thought process?
No, Paul, I was just going to say, because there is the new stand gone in now, you know, which will obviously bring in enhanced ticket sales. That academy is, it's producing good players. You know, there's potential sell-on clauses on the way in the next couple of years. So even if this goes really sour for Shamrock Rovers, like, are they protected from a complete collapse, similar to what we may have seen in the past?
Yeah, I think the worry is that, you know, they're expecting a loss of somewhere in the region of £2 million for the financial year that is 2023, and that is, I guess, a bit of a worry from a Shamrock Rovers point of view, that you can't continue to, I guess, register losses like that, and some of that might be down to the playing squad. I think, Anthony, listen, going forward, they will rely on kind of player sales and bringing players through that academy, and they've done that incredibly successfully. They've even brought in, you know, the likes of Andy Lyons and sold them on at a profit. And I would imagine that they might even look at someone like the likes of Neil Ferrugia as potentially being the next one to push out the door if he manages to stay fit, and bringing in a big transfer fee for those players. And you have to say that in their dealings of players going across to the UK, they've held out for good transfer fees, and they'll need to continue to do that. I don't think they'll be at a deficit from a playing squad point of view. I think, you know, they had more than enough in the bank this year to kind of get themselves over the line, and that was even during periods of the season when they were out key players. Neil was out, Trevor Clark was out, Jack Byrne was out, and they've had to rotate the squad, and they've had to use, I guess, every resource that they have at their disposal. So at the 19s game yesterday, and they have a really good crop as well coming through again, the likes of Noonan, Naj Razi. They have players who can certainly kind of fill any void of an experienced player that maybe had to go out the door because of having to cut the budget. So I wouldn't expect that there's going to be this massive drop off from Shamrock Rovers, but I still don't think you can ignore the fact that a £2 million loss to a League of Ireland club is substantial. Yes, they will have additional bumps on seats in the new stand, and that's an extra revenue source. Stewie's mentioned about kind of commercialising the club. I do believe that more can be done there, but you don't want to be relying on good European runs every year in order to kind of balance them up, because that is not something that, unfortunately, we're not at a stage where we can rely on League of Ireland clubs going deep into European competitions. The Conference League has been great, and it opens up an extra avenue, but Shamrock Rovers found it hard this year, and a bad draw here or there can really scupper your chances in European Cup competition. So yes, there is some work that needs to be done. Will we see certain elements of the first team being trimmed? Maybe. A lot of those players are still under contract for next season. So you would imagine, listen, the basis of the squad is still going to be there. There's still going to be the team to catch next season. But at the same time, we can't get away from kind of €2 million losses.
Stuey, let's talk about Shells, because the uncertainty at a club like Shamrock Rovers potentially opens the door for a club like Shells. New owners in midway through this season. Damien Duff at the helm. They've had a really good campaign, possibly in Europe. We don't know that yet, but they have finished fourth, so we'll see how the cup final plays out. And yeah, Damien Duff has sort of aired frustration over the delay on his own situation there. He wants to tie down players as quickly as possible over the winter so we can plan to next season. I mean, are they in danger of squandering a big opportunity to kick on?
Yeah, well, to answer your question, kind of, yeah. I mean, this is the time of the season where you want to be signing players, no doubt about it. You certainly want to have been speaking to them. I mean, realistically, you would have been speaking to players probably 4 or 5 weeks ago. So it's not ideal. And especially from an opposition point of view, when you look at what's going on at Shamrock Rovers, you know, if you're Pats, Derry, Bows, Shells, you want to go, look, let's get in here. Let's get in here before they do. Let's, take advantage of the situation. That's just the competitiveness that exists. That's just natural. So for Damien Duff, and considering, if it is true that what we're being told, there's a few bob on the way to invest in the playing side of things, he would want that now, wouldn't he? He would want to be able to kind of go out and get the best players that he can, and by all means, when you consider the kind of the natural League of Ireland turnaround of players, there's always a kind of a certainly a good crop of players available at the end of the season to kind of pick from. So that must be extremely frustrating for him. His own contract side of things, knowing him in the little way I do, I kind of believe if he would turn around and say, I don't really care too much about that, but I'd like to be able to sign players, I'd believe that a little bit from him, to be quite honest. Although I would say, I imagine it's quite frustrating for him as well that the ownership haven't kind of tied down his own contract, especially when you consider that I would imagine there'd be a lot of talk of outside factors. There'd be a lot of interest in Damien Duff at this moment in time when you consider what he's achieved as a manager, as a young manager at Shell. So I would have thought he would have been forced on the list to kind of tie down. So I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I believe him when he says that it's been a bit frustration. It's all a little bit slow. It's a little bit static. So hopefully something gets done this week, which I'd expect it probably will.
I mean, they're going to lose Jack Moylan, Paul, but what is it realistic to expect Shelbourne, if with the right investment and the right decisions over the course of the winter, to come back as a team that can actually challenge to win the league? I mean, as I said, they may be in Europe as well next year, which presents obviously a different kind of challenge as well, trying to marry those twin ambitions. But are they that far off, or is that too big a leap?
Yeah, I think it's too big a leap to close the gap on Shamrock Rovers. But if you look at, I guess, the process that they've gone through from being promoted, they finished 7th last year, 4th this year, and they've had an FAI Cup final in between. You know, you can see the steady sort of building blocks that Duff is putting in place. Last year, they were very difficult to beat. This year was much of the same, but sprinkling a bit more quality when they were in possession of the ball. And of course, in the final third, they looked far more of a threat. And a lot of that was down to Jack Moylan. They were without Sean Boyd for a large part of the season. That's somebody who can maybe come in and fill a bit of that void. But they certainly need maybe 3 or 4 bodies to bridge that gap again to the likes of Derry and Rovers. And, you know, repeating what they've done this year, maybe going into, you know, closing the gap a bit on Pats and finishing 3rd, that would be seen as massive progress again. But they're not far away. You can certainly see the way he has them set up, that they're probably one of the most frustrating and hardest teams to play in the league. A bit more quality, as I mentioned, in possession of the ball will probably get them to that next sort of rank. And a lot of that also relies on Damien Duff still being there, which you would imagine. So yeah, I can understand his frustrations. He can obviously see where this team are at and where they could potentially go. They won't be far away, put it that way, Anthony, but they're probably still a bit short of competing with the likes of Shamrock Rovers. European football can also only be 2 additional games within a season, so that's not too much to contend with. But a couple more players, I'm sure they've been active and having conversations. Duffer is always kind of that way. We're kind of being proactive about things. I'm sure he sees a bit of a vision there. Jack Moylan will obviously be massive boots to fill in the goals that he has contributed this season. But they're a team who are in a safe set of hands at this moment in time.
Let's look ahead to this cup final then, Stuey. First of all, just on the crowd, because the record was just over 37,000, which was 2 years ago, Bowls and Pats, that game. We are definitely going to smash that record this year. I would say mid-40s easily. What's going on? Like this organic growth continues to go up. Like what's happening in your own view? I know it's probably no way.
I think it's simple. It's post-COVID.
Yeah,
people just want to get out the door. It's that simple. Is that 37,000 in the modern Aviva?
Yes.
That's the overall record. Okay, I think it's. Am I right in saying 44 is the Daily Mount? I mean, of the overall history of the cup.
I'll have to take your word on that. I don't know.
I think that could be broken. To be fair, yeah. I think, and that would be an incredible achievement when you look at the kind of crowds we used to get at gates at games back in the 60s, like, you know. But
you probably played that one, Stuey, did you?
Oh yeah, just about, yeah. That's what kind of debut doing that. I teed you up that well, better Paul, didn't I? Have to be careful. Have to be careful of him, Mikey. You know what I mean? However, it's post-COVID. It's no doubt about it. I think people have just been, well, a couple of things are going on. I definitely think it's a post-COVID thing. People just want to get out the door, live events. They want to get attached to something real. You know, something real. Going to games rather than watching them on the television. Something that was, I remember speaking about, God, a long time now, even probably 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, airing this frustration at why people are so infatuated with the Premier League, and they go to games every week, and they spend 200 quid on flights and tickets, all that kind of stuff, like, you know, and you kind of wonder, like, really, is that really your thing? Is there a 5%, 10%, 15% of those people that might be there just to grab them and say, look, come here, can you, like, why don't you go to a game here? Why don't you go to your local team and get involved and realize and experience what you are experiencing in England, do it here. And I think there's an element of that as well. I think clubs have done an extremely good job at trying to convince those people, say, hey, hang on a second, you know, look, fine, you know, you follow Man United, Leeds, Liverpool, Grant, look, no issue. But what about this? What do you think? Come along, see what you think. You know, you might enjoy it, like, you know. Bows being the one club that have done that extremely well, have just tapped into, they've just broadened their reach, you know, and the other football clubs have followed suit and have said, look, there's something here for you. Will you come down and get involved? And I think it's worked. It's worked. However, what worries me is that if the product and if the competitiveness of the games dwindles, and I've seen this before in League of Ireland, and as Paul alludes to, I'm old, okay, I've seen a lot of peaks and troughs in this league, and probably seen 2 or 3 extreme ones, and they go away if they don't see, you know, if they don't get something from the games, if you don't see that competitiveness and they don't see their team really progressing, or not even really progressing, just they don't enjoy the game. So it's a constant work in progress, especially for Ireland, especially for League of Ireland, because it's not because of the animal that is the Premier League. You know, there's always and I think it's quite fake, to be quite honest with you. And I know I was even saying to you that I'm not too interested in the Premier League, to be quite honest with you. I'm just more interested in trying to do whatever it is I can do to kind of really progress the game here. But that being said, the game's in a really good place here. It's in a really good place here. The cup final has become this marquee event, which is fantastic. And it's a huge way of promoting the game here, and long may it continue. However, I want to see that interest that goes into the cup final. I want to see that on a weekly basis in games here in the league. But that being said, I think we could be looking at probably breaking the records on Sunday. Yeah.
Well, it is our showpiece game, the cup final, Paul, and it will be a great occasion. How do you see it playing out? Because, you know, a couple of years ago, it was just a moment of magic from Chris Forrester, which is very often the case in these kind of games, these occasions. You wouldn't imagine there's going to be much between them again on Sunday. Where's your money?
I've always had a feeling, and I don't really know why, but just that Bows will go on and win the FAI Cup this year. I don't know what it is, but there's just a niggling feeling that I have that it's been written for them. They've been waiting for silverware for so long. I think they'll get the job done. That said, just having a bit of look back on, you know, Bows results and the form after April 10 this year against sides who finished above them. They've played 15, lost 6, drawn 8, and only won 1. So there has to be major question marks about Bows in particularly the second half of the season this year, that they just haven't managed to win enough games of football. They had a brilliant start to the season, started on fire, top of the league after the first round of games, I think, and have somewhat fallen away in recent weeks and recent months. And you would think that if they are to get a result against Pats on the weekend, they're going to have to show a bit more than they have in those games. I think a lot of their play centers around Jonathan Afolabi, you know, being that target man of not only bringing a physical presence and goals to his game, but he's also able to kind of bring the wider players into involved in the game, likes of Danny Grant, the likes of Dylan Connolly, whoever starts out wide. Great legs, great pace. You would think on a big pitch in the Aviva that should suit them. And I think they should have enough. I don't know what part of me just feels like Bows are going to go on and do it. I think so much good, like Stewie's mentioned, be done with the club. They've brought so many players through and sold so many players on. The one thing that is really missing from kind of the last 10 years of growth is a trophy. And I think this will be the time that they'll get it done. But it's going to be a really difficult test. Cup finals are always, particularly in the last few years, when you think back, maybe with the Shells and Derry game being the exception, they've been really, really tight affairs. And they played out a really tight game 2 years ago. And you would expect that this is going to be something of the same, because Pats, since Jonathan Daly has come in, have been brilliant. They have a lot of young players. I maybe have a question mark about how they might have handled the occasion. It's a big game, massive attendance. But whatever part of it is, maybe it's the fact that there's 3 both season ticket holders in my family that keep telling me they're going to win the cup. I just have a feeling that they're just going to get over the line.
Yeah. Where are you from, Paul?
I'm Castleknock. My dad is Cabra.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
Very good.
So
okay,
I was.
I'll let that one go.
I was disowned when I signed.
Are you?
Just briefly, Paul, because we effectively have another cup final on Friday night, the promotion relegation playoff between Waterford and Cork. I mean that should be another very tight game. It's hard to pick a winner. I guess Waterford have momentum, although fair play to Cove Rambers, they gave them a right go in the first division playoff final. I'll come to you as well on this, Stuey. Just a quick prediction on who you think might shade that.
On the Waterford Cork
Friday night.
Yeah, I think Cork might do. Yeah, I think Cork might just. Although even as I say that, I'm worried, because I've been kind of worried a little bit about Cork for a while. There's kind of a naivety there about them. Although they do have very good individual players that on a night can win you games. So I think I might just about tip Cork. I quite frustrated by the whole playoff system in the first division. I don't understand why a team that can finish 50 plus points off in 5th gets an opportunity to get promoted. I'd much rather have seen second place play against second straight off. I think that's just a personal grievance of mine. I think it's a ridiculous system. However, ultimately we'd love to see both Cork and Waterford in the Premier, but that's not to be this year. I think I might just go for Cork.
Paul?
I think I'll go with Waterford. I just worry for Cork, and I guess kind of echoing what Stuey said there, just the naivety. Watched them and did the game, the semi-final against Pats, and they were actually quite good, particularly in the first half and very much in the game. They concede sloppy goals, and that would be a worry for me. Like, they conceded 64 goals in the league this year. Only UCD were worse. And when you have somebody like Ronan Coughlin, who's probably should be playing in the Premier Division level, he's more than capable of doing that. Has scored a lot of goals at Waterford. I think that's kind of a tricky combination when you got somebody banging form like himself, and Cork, who just seem to find ways of losing games. And I think when you're in that rut, you may find it hard to get over the line. So I'll just tip Waterford after their close shave the other night. What a bicycle kick, by the way, in that game. It was brilliant to level things up in the dying embers of the game. But I fancy Keith Long. I fancy Waterford.
Okay, well, look, we're almost ready to wrap up, lads, but just quickly before we do have an international squad announcement coming on Thursday, Stuey. Usually we go through players in form and try and predict who Stephen Kenny is going to call up, but I think this is just a strange time for him, because realistically this looks like it could be the last squad that he announces. 2 games to go, a qualifier away to the Netherlands, and then a friendly against New Zealand. It's hard not to have sympathy with him, really. Do you think he should be in this position, or do you think the FAI at this point should have just made the call, or am I being unfair? Has he still got a chance of staying on?
I don't see it, to be honest with you now. I think the argument now is possibly, and it's been the question for a while now. Do you leave him in place, or do you get a new man in place to kind of give them 2 games to kind of get settled in, or whatever the case may be? Look, that's not going to happen. That's it. I don't think there's. The only thing I'd like to see out of these 2 games is to see. I just would love to see an improvement in the performance from just the individual players. I don't care who's in charge, to be quite honest with you. It's all become a little bit sort of tedious and drawn out. But I'd be a little bit critical of some of the players, to be quite honest with you. I think they've. I hate using the word down tools, right? Because I know it's probably a difficult environment to be in, but I've seen a dramatic fall off in performance level from a number of players in the first team. And you only have to have a look at Benny's performance to realise where they should really be at. So I think there has to be a little bit of collective responsibility here. But it obviously, the buck stops with the manager. He hasn't been able to get enough out of them. I personally think he struggled since Anthony Barry has left. I think the Ukraine away game 2022 was our peak everything has been downhill since then.
Paul, let me put this to you. Ireland win 3-0 in Amsterdam, and then they hammer New Zealand 5-0. Does it change anything?
Ireland will not win 3-0 in Amsterdam. No, I don't think it will. I think we've seen too much in recent games, particularly the Greece fixtures. I think you can go back, like Stuey's mentioned, to the Nations League campaign. That's when I started to get really worried. I think it was the game against Armenia at home when we 2-0 up and then maybe went to 2-2 and then won it late on. I started to see cracks in the performance. I think it needs a change. I thought they should have done it earlier and they should have given somebody the remainder of this campaign and the friendly game against New Zealand just to start trying to bed things in, because competitive fixtures will come around quickly again for us, and we can't afford to have another situation whereby a manager loses 3-4 games. So we say we have to give him time to embed his sort of way of playing, his philosophy into the team. I just don't see it, Anthony. I don't think anybody associated with the national team really does see Stephen staying on, which is an awful pity, because you could see how much it meant to him and everybody wanted it to go well for him. But you know, results and performance of late just haven't been good enough.
Okay, before we go, let's just have a quick recap of the SSE Airtricity Women's Premier Division results at the weekend. Athlone Town bet Wexford Youths 2-1. Sligo Rovers had a 2-1 win over DLR Waves. Galway bet the champions Peamount United 3-0. Shamrock Rovers won 4-1 at Treaty United. The final round of league games takes place this weekend when Peamount will be awarded the trophy. And the FAI Cup final between Shelbourne and Athlone takes place a week after that at Tallaght Stadium. That's a rematch of last year's decider. Thanks again to Paul, Corry and to Stuey Byrne for joining us this week. FAI Cup final is live on RTÉ2 and the RTÉ Player this Sunday, and live commentary on RTÉ Radio 1 and a live blog on RTÉ Online. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week.